has experienced trauma or racism in the past can be triggered by the recent mass shootings.
A Dane County official is calling attention to the lasting mental health impacts following events around the country and closer to home. Our Rose Schmidt is here with tips for anyone who's feeling shaken by all of this. Rose?
Yes, Dane County Board Supervisor Yogesh Chavla posted on his blog about his experience at the Shake the Lake fireworks show earlier this summer in hopes of drawing attention to what he calls the epidemic of gun violence happening across the country and the trauma response needed.
Me, my wife, and my child were at Shake the Lake.
A memory that turned into chaos at the fireworks show.
A number of gunshots rang out.
Has changed the way Dane County Board Supervisor Yogesh Chavla thinks about shootings.
It was a real moment of, sheer terror.
But as he remembers that day in June, he says there's a part of the conversation being left out.
Really need to start taking a trauma-informed approach.
Chavla says public officials need to ask questions.
How can we help the community that was affected? Which nonprofits do we have who have specialists in these areas?
Psychologist Dr. Lisa Baker says the recent mass shootings in Dayton and El Paso can have an even deeper impact than shootings on a smaller scale because those were targeted at specific groups of people from a place of hate.
It brings ripple effects across our society of fear, especially from individuals and groups who are more targeted than others.
Those ripple effects, she says, can be anything from fear, anxiety, to compassion for people affected.
When people relate to or see themselves like the victims because of some characteristics or backgrounds or because they're in a targeted group, we're more likely to see secondary trauma symptoms.
But what's important is for people not to isolate themselves and instead talk to friends and family if they start to lose a sense of safety and control.
When you think of some of the most sacred areas where you're supposed to feel the most safety and comfort, schools, places of worship, community gatherings and festivals.
It can be a normal response at first to want to avoid those types of places, but it's important to work through that if it becomes a lasting problem.
3 weeks after, 3 months after, how are you still affected by this? What resources do you need?
Dr. Baker says people may watch more TV and media in hopes of trying to understand and make sense of these mass shootings. But she says because these events are so senseless, that can actually make symptoms worse. So she recommends taking breaks from these images of the shooting. And anyone who feels triggered by these shooting events can call the crime response team at the Dane County District Attorney's Office.
Thanks, Rose.